60 years ago, a man from a small North Carolina town won a race by 14 laps. Not 14 seconds, 14 full laps. And when the checkered flag dropped, the crowd wasn't just watching a driver. They were watching the architect of an entire sport. This week, that man is gone, and NASCAR will never be the same. Ned Jarrett passed away on Thursday, June 4th, 2026, at his home in Newton, North Carolina. He was 93 years old. His family confirmed he died peacefully of natural causes, surrounded by the people he loved. He was a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, 1961 and 1965. He won 50 races across 352 starts. He appeared in the top 10 in nearly 7 out of every 10 races he entered. And when his driving days were done, he walked straight into a broadcast booth and became the most recognizable voice in stock car racing. That's not one Hall of Fame career, that's two. To understand what Ned Jarrett meant to this sport, you have to understand the era he came from. When Jarrett first got behind the wheel in the early 1950s, NASCAR was still scratching its way into national relevance. These were raw, dangerous circuits. No media deals, no corporate sponsors, no guarantee the sport would even survive the decade. Jarrett didn't just compete in that environment, he mastered it. His 1965 championship run was historic. 13 wins, 45 top 10 finishes, and a points margin over the second-place driver that was so large it bordered on embarrassing. More than 3,000 points ahead of the runner-up. That wasn't dominance. That was a different category entirely. But here's what separated Ned from other greats of his era. The man understood that racing was bigger than the racetrack. While still driving in the 1960s, he launched a radio show. He was thinking about audience, about reach, about the future of this sport before most of his peers even thought about retirement. That vision turned out to be everything. Let's talk about legacy with some honesty. There's a generation of NASCAR fans, millions of them, who never saw Ned Jarrett behind the wheel. They never watched him dominate the Southern 500 at Darlington, but they heard his voice. They grew up watching CBS and ESPN, and Ned Jarrett was the calm, authoritative presence that explained this sport to them. That matters enormously. NASCAR's explosion in the 1980s and 1990s wasn't just about faster cars or bigger tracks. It was about television, about whether casual fans could sit down on a Sunday afternoon and actually connect with what they were watching. Ned Jarrett made that connection possible. For 17 years on CBS alone, he translated the complexity of motorsport into something millions of Americans could follow. Now, there's a moment that gets referenced every time his name comes up, the 1993 Daytona 500 finish. His son Dale was battling Dale Earnhardt for the lead, and Ned, behind the microphone as a broadcaster, called the closing laps. Think about what that asks of a person, to remain a professional. In the most personal moment of your career, with your own son racing toward the most iconic finish line in the sport, he delivered. The broadcast became one of the most replayed moments in NASCAR history. And when Dale crossed the line, what Ned said was less about reporting and more about a father watching something extraordinary unfold in real time. That moment alone tells you everything about who Ned Jarrett was. He also understood the weight of what he built as a parent. His son Dale didn't just become a NASCAR driver, he became a champion, a 3-time Daytona 500 winner, a Hall of Famer. The Jarretts became only the second father-son combination in history to both win Cup championships, joining Lee and Richard Petty, and both Ned and Dale are in the Hall of Fame, one of just 5 families in the sport to achieve that as drivers. What Ned Jarrett built wasn't a career, it was a lineage. The tributes came fast across the racing world, and the tone was consistent. This wasn't just sadness, it was reverence. For older fans, the ones who watched him race in the 60s, this is losing a connection to NASCAR's foundation. These are the years that made the sport. And Ned was the last major living link to that era, the sport's oldest living champion. For the broadcast generation, the fans raised on CBS Sunday coverage, losing Ned Jarrett is like losing the voice that introduced them to stock car racing in the first place. And for the people inside the sport, the drivers, the crew chiefs, the current media, the reaction is about what the man stood for: professionalism, integrity, putting the sport first. Those qualities are rare in any era. They were legendary in his. NASCAR takes this moment seriously. They honor Ned Jarrett, not with a one-day tribute, but with a sustained commitment to what he represented. The kind of character, sportsmanship, and love for the sport that transcends wins and losses. His legacy gets woven into how NASCAR tells its own story going forward. Young drivers learn who he was. Broadcasters study his work. The Jarrett name stays central to the sport's identity for another generation. The sport pauses, puts out the press releases, runs the highlight packages for a weekend, and moves on. The modern NASCAR schedule doesn't slow down for sentiment. Ned Jarrett becomes another name on a wall, respected in name, forgotten in substance. And the deeper story of what he built, not just the wins, but the cultural bridge he constructed between NASCAR and mainstream America, gets reduced to a Wikipedia entry. Which outcome this sport chooses says a lot about what NASCAR values right now. Ned Jarrett lived 93 years and left the sport better in virtually every way a person can. 2 championships, 50 wins. A Hall of Fame broadcasting career, a son who became a champion, a sport that grew up partly because of what he helped build. You can count the people in NASCAR history who did more for this sport, on one hand. So here's the question I want you to think about and drop in the comments. Who is the single most important figure in NASCAR history? Not just the fastest driver or the biggest winner, but the person who did the most to shape what this sport actually is? Is it Ned Jarrett? Richard Petty? Dale Earnhardt? Or is it someone whose name doesn't come up enough? Make your case below. And if you want more of this kind of deep dive into the stories that actually matter in American sports, you already know what to do.